So here's a harpsichord. I'm going to demonstrate this instrument for you in just a second, but I'll give you a view of it from all around the sides. It's about 6 feet long, about as long as a person, and it weighs maybe 180 or 200 pounds. It sits on a wooden frame. The body of the instrument comes off the frame, which makes it much easier to transport than a piano, for example. It's not nearly as heavy as a piano because it's a wood frame and not a steel frame. This harpsichord has one keyboard. The keys of this one are faced with plastic made to look like ivory, and you can see there are a couple places where the plastics come off. In the heat and humidity here in Tennessee, I have to glue them back on. The strings range in size from very short at the front end to very long along the back, almost the full length of the instrument. So those are the lowest sounding strings, and the highest ones are here. And each string is wound around a peg right here. And the way that the instrument is brought into tune is that I have a tuning hammer that looks like this, and the tuning hammer fits onto the pegs, and I can tighten or loosen the string, the wire that is the string, to make the note a little teeny bit higher or a little bit lower, and I still have to maintain enough tension that it makes a musical sound when it's plucked. This part of the instrument here is called the jack rail because it covers what are called the jacks. The jacks are what make the harpsichord actually sound. Here's the sound. And that's because the way this works is that each jack has on it a little quill. And it's hard to see on this camera, but there's a tiny little sticky out piece of plastic right above my thumb there. And that would have been made of the base of a feather, the quill of a feather back in the day, but this harpsichord has it made out of plastic. And as each jack is pressed, when I press a key, the key itself is a lever, and it flips up that long jack so that the plucker plucks, the quill plucks the string. And so each note has a string pluck to it. One of the premier keyboard instruments in the Baroque period. And in fact, there was really a flowering of keyboard instrument types. So we have the organ, we have the harpsichord, we have eventually the clavichord. There's even another little instrument that's a keyboard instrument called the virginals. But this is the harpsichord, and it really was one of the workhorses of the Baroque period because it could play solo music, it could play in a chamber ensemble, in a small ensemble, and it could add inner harmony and fill in the inner voices in large ensembles. So the way the harpsichord works is that, here's what it sounds like. Now, there's only really one way to pluck. I can't pluck hard or soft, so no matter how hard I press or how softly I press, the sound is the same. So there's not really a volume control on a harpsichord. The way I play louder might be to play more notes. I'm going to put the jack rail back on so those jacks don't fly right out. If I play more notes, it sounds louder, just because there's more notes playing than if I play a few. Versus, I can also add strings. This harpsichord has 2 sets of strings that can play at the same time at the same pitch. And so that makes it louder because now there's twice as many strings. And I also have a set of strings that are probably not in tune right now that play twice as high as the other strings. Oh goodness, they're very out of tune. But even with that noisy sound, you can hear it's much louder. So the way the harpsichord works is by each string being plucked. And that can make really quite a lovely sound. Here's an example of a little piece of music that I would play during a performance of Messiah. It's during what's called the FIFA, or the Pastoral Symphony, and this is my part. So it's quite good at sort of filling in those little chords, as well as playing some solo repertoire, and you're going to listen to an example of that by the composer Elisabeth Jacquet de la Guerre.